In Ansel Elkins' poem, Autobiography of Eve, Eve stands in terror on the threshold between paradise and a new unknown. When she hears her voice sing out to her from across the forbidden side, she shakes herself awake and at once is ablaze and alive. The poem concludes, "I did not fall from grace. I leapt to freedom." In this poem, and in this week's first reading, Eve had agency. She knew what paradise offered and what was forbidden there. More than the assurance of paradise, she wanted, come what may, freedom to choose for herself. Adam, taking the fruit and tethering himself to his earthly love, ultimately chose the same. My pulse quickens, imagining Eve, having made her choice, at once alive and in a blaze of green fire. Of course, it's tempting. I relate. Most of all, I want what I can't and don't have. My forebears in the garden also wanted the freedom to call their own shots, to decide for themselves what was and wasn't off limits, to live freely and fully in a new kingdom, one of their own making. What is more human than that? To live is to grapple with our limitations. In some sense, we are all trapped by our circumstances. We have life, this garden, but of course there's a catch. We can't have it forever. I love the sleeping Eve, and I love the humans in the subsequent biblical stories who live and fail and love and hurt and fall and leap, just as I love the fallible humans with whom I share this earth today, myself included. I love Jesus, too, who shows us another way. In this week's gospel, this newly baptized man who built his ministry on relationships with other people pulls away from friends and family and comforts and everything familiar. He goes alone from the garden to the desert, from feast to fasting, from public life and ministry to solitude. He doesn't leap into the desert. He literally flat out refuses the temptation to leap from the temple to test God. Instead, he retreats there. It isn't an impulsive action with an immediate reward. It is an intentional, deliberate action which he recommits to for 40 days and nights. Where Adam and Eve turned away from God, every time Jesus is tempted, God is where he turns. When he is hungry, he trusts that the only food that will fully nourish him is the Word of God. When he is doubting, he redoubles his belief that God is watching out for him. When the possibilities of godliness and kingdoms are dangled before him, he secures himself in a kingdom that is not of this earth, where a place for him is eternally reserved. This is the choice we have agency over. When tempted to reach for that one thing we can't have and most want, maybe the power to control our circumstances or other people or our fates, Jesus shows us that we can reach for God instead. Of course, without Eve's leap, there would be no Jesus. There would be no other way if Eve hadn't crossed the threshold. Shame and guilt are not the point of these stories. The point is, the choice is, as ever, ours. That is how loved we are. Thanks be to God.